Hi guys, I'm Victoria, and I'm the host of Eyes on Crime. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to take a quick minute to say thank you for all the support. I'm still pretty new to YouTube, so every watch, like, or comment means the world to me. I've always had a deep interest in true crime. When I was little, my parents would wait on me in Walmart and the post office while I stood there reading the missing persons bulletins. I was obsessed with unsolved mysteries, and over the years, my passion for these cases and the people behind them has only grown. I write for a living, so I decided to combine my love of storytelling with my interest in crime, and that's how this channel got started. I know there are a lot of amazing true crime creators out there, and you have limited time each day to watch something, so thank you for choosing Eyes on Crime. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And if you'd be willing to share one of my videos on social media, I'd be extremely grateful. All right, enough about all of that. Let's get to why you're here. Today's episode is about a case that still doesn't make sense. A young woman on spring break, a luxury resort in the Dominican Republic, and a night that ended with more questions than answers. Her name was Sudiksha Konanki, and from the moment the story broke, the public had strong opinions. Some blamed the man she was last seen with. Some turned on her friends. Others questioned how her family handled the aftermath. Was it a tragic accident or something far more sinister? Either way, none of it makes sense. When you hear what happened, you'll understand why so many people can't let it go. Sudiksha was 20 years old. She was born in India and became a U.S. permanent resident in 2006 after her family moved to South Riding, Virginia. She went to Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, one of the most competitive public high schools in the country, and later enrolled at the University of Pittsburgh, where she was studying to become a doctor. One of her family's neighbors, Shekhar Pandam, who had known Sudiksha since she was 3, described her as both brilliant and kind, and was deeply loved by her community. When spring break rolled around in March 2025, she and 5 of her girlfriends decided to take a trip to Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic. Just a few days to relax, recharge, and enjoy the sun before heading back into lecture and tests. The group landed on Sunday, March 3rd. Her parents later confirmed she had texted them during the trip to say she was having a great time. They checked into the Rio Republica, a 5-star, all-inclusive resort along the coastline. Think luxury beachfront, non-stop nightlife, and a crowd made up mostly of American tourists. It's part of the Rio Hotels and Resorts chain, known for upscale properties across the Caribbean. Rio Republica in Punta Cana is adults only, with 8 pools, 3 with swim-up bars, and the Splash Water World Water Park. It also has 9 restaurants, a beachside jerk grill, and 10 bars, including a 24-hour sports bar. Guests can visit the spa, catch nightly entertainment, or party in the on-site nightclub. The night Sudiksha disappeared, conditions at the Rio Republica resort were notably chaotic due to a prolonged power outage that lasted about 25 hours in some areas. Clara O'Bannon, a fellow University of Pittsburgh student staying at the resort, described the lobby as crowded with guests attempting to charge their phones. The keycard system was non-functional, leaving many guests locked out of their rooms and wandering the premises late into the night. Clara noted that the beach felt unmonitored and unsafe, lacking staff or lifeguards on duty. She mentioned that the overall atmosphere at the resort felt unusually tense, with people acting strangely. With no electricity and even the water starting to go out, tensions at the resort kept rising. Rooms were stifling, people couldn't sleep, so they drank, wandered, and roamed different parts of the resort at hours when most should have been in bed. Later that night, the group went to the resort's nightclub, a place known for its all-night disco scene. That's reportedly when Sudiksha met a man named Josh Reeby. He was a 22-year-old student from Iowa attending St. Cloud State University in Minnesota. He had arrived separately and wasn't part of Sudiksha's friend group, but it seems the two of them connected during the trip. Electricity was reportedly restored around 3 a.m., but questions remain about how many cameras were fully operational and what might have been missed earlier in the night. Fortunately, surveillance footage captured in the early morning hours give us a partial glimpse of what unfolded. One clip shows Sudiksha walking with friends through a crowded hotel lobby. She appears coherent but visibly intoxicated. In another clip, she is seen briefly bent over with her back to the camera, a moment observers believe shows her vomiting. Moments later, she is back inside the bar, jumping and hugging others, seemingly re-energized and continuing to socialize. Josh appears in the same footage, standing nearby. At one point, he turns away from the camera, leans over the trash can, and appears to be sick as well. Around 4 a.m., Sudiksha and Josh were seen walking hand in hand. About 15 minutes later, another clip showed them with their arms around each other, followed by 3 of Sudiksha's friends and a man believed to be with Josh. Both Sudiksha and Josh appeared to be stumbling slightly as the group made their way toward the beach. About 30 minutes later, surveillance captured 2 of Sudiksha's friends returning from the beach without them. It's unclear exactly when the others left, but at some point everyone else was gone, leaving Josh and Sudiksha alone. I want to remind you again how long the walk is from the hotel to the beach. While they were down there, they were a long way from the resort, isolated, surrounded by darkness, and nothing but the sound of the ocean. Around approximately 8:55 a.m., Josh returned to the resort alone. Cameras captured him shirtless, barefoot, with one hand stuffed awkwardly in his pocket. He later told investigators that his room key had gone missing while he was asleep on the beach, so it's believed he may have gone to a friend's room first or asked the front desk for a replacement. Still, exactly how he got back inside remains unknown. That morning, March 6th, Sudiksha's friends had gone on a scheduled excursion, something she hadn't signed up for. When they returned, they noticed she wasn't there. Her phone was still in the room. She may have left it there the night before because she had no way to charge it, but either way, she was gone and they had no way to contact her. When her friends found Josh later that day and asked where she was, he told them he had passed out on the beach and woke up alone. He assumed she had already left and said he went back to his room. She wasn't officially reported missing until around 4 p.m., roughly 12 hours after she was last seen on surveillance walking to the beach. During the initial response to the missing persons report, local police discovered a white netted sarong draped over a beach chair and her flip-flops placed below. Beyond that, there were no signs of where she went or what might have happened next. Her parents, Sudiksha and Dismissal Konanki, flew to the Dominican Republic with 2 close family friends as soon as they heard their daughter was missing. Her father, a software engineer, and her mother, a physician, were immediately on the ground pushing for answers. They met with police and resort officials, asked to review surveillance, and called for a more thorough investigation. Dominican authorities continued to suggest she likely drowned, but the family pushed back. They also contacted U.S. lawmakers and pressed for FBI involvement. Although Josh wasn't officially detained or arrested, authorities supposedly confiscated his passport and placed him under police supervision at a hotel. Dominican authorities designated him as a witness only in the case. His father flew in from the U.S. shortly after, hoping to be by his side, but reports suggest he was given very limited access to his son. Search efforts officially began on March 8th. Dominican authorities launched a comprehensive operation around the Rio Republica resort, covering both land and sea. K-9 units combed the beach and surrounding vegetation. Helicopters, drones, and divers scanned the ocean, including the coral reef just offshore. Still, no physical trace of Sudiksha was found despite the scale of the effort. Authorities reported no signs of a struggle. Some officials suggested her body may have become trapped in the reef. That same day, the Embassy of India confirmed it was working closely with both Dominican authorities and the U.S. State Department. Officials from both governments acknowledged the seriousness of the case and began coordinating diplomatically across jurisdictions. Around that time, Sudiksha's parents filed a formal complaint asking authorities not to assume she had drowned. They emphasized that she was a strong swimmer, cautious by nature, and never the type to take risks. Her father gave a statement to WTOP around this time, urging officials to widen the investigation. He said that if she had gone into the ocean, her body likely would have washed ashore, especially since 4 days had already passed. He also pointed out that she always carried her phone and was always in touch with her family. He formally asked investigators to consider other possibilities, including foul play, trafficking, or kidnapping. By March 10th, the search expanded significantly. More than 300 law enforcement officers were involved, including FBI agents, Homeland Security personnel, and Dominican authorities. FBI agents from the Miami field office and legal attachés were dispatched to assist. The Virginia Attorney General's office and the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, her home jurisdiction, also joined the effort, helping review phone records, timelines, and surveillance footage. But the boundaries were clear. Dominican authorities were in charge. U.S. agents could support, but not lead. All interviews, evidence handling, and forensics had to follow Dominican law. That meant every step, from issuing subpoenas to reviewing surveillance, moved through layers of legal review. Certified translators were required. Chain of custody procedures had to be airtight. Former FBI agents warned that even one misstep could derail the case. As legal complexity increased, her parents hired an attorney to help navigate the cross-border legal process. They formally requested the case be reclassified as a criminal investigation, not just a missing persons report. On March 13th, Josh was formally interviewed by a Dominican prosecutor. With his lawyer present, he was asked to explain what happened that night. As the investigation continued, attention turned to Josh's changing story and how much of it didn't add up. He gave multiple versions of what happened that night. In the first version, he said that he and Sudiksha were in the water. He swallowed water from the rough surf, which made him throw up, so he went back to shore. But before leaving, he asked her if she was okay, got to shore, he threw up and laid down. In the second version, he stated that he and Sudiksha were in waist-deep water, talking and kissing, when an unexpected wave crashes over them and sweeps them into the current. Josh claims they try to call for help when they surface, but there is no one around. Josh further claims he grabs Sudiksha and holds her under his arm as he tries to get them back to shore. He tries to get her to breathe as he pulls them both back to the beach, all while struggling to catch his own breath. In the third version, Josh describes how he heroically gets Sudiksha back to shore, but says he swallowed a lot of water and could have lost consciousness several times, reaching the ground of the beach. He pulls Sudiksha in front of himself, but then she casually walks to gather her belongings in knee-deep water. Josh stated that he asks her if she's okay, but doesn't hear an answer because he's vomiting all of the salt water he swallowed while saving Sudiksha. He says he looked around and didn't see anyone, so he assumed she grabbed her belongings. He explained feeling bad and tired, so Josh says he fell asleep in a beach chair. Every version placed her alive in the final moments, but none explained what actually happened after that. Josh had once been a certified lifeguard. He'd been formally trained to handle rough water, signal for help, and respond to someone in distress. He knew what to do in an emergency, yet he claimed he blacked out. And when investigators later asked whether Sudiksha had called for help or if he'd told anyone what happened, he refused to answer. "My lawyer advised me not to answer that question," he said, but if he had really gone through something that traumatic, if he'd saved a girl's life, why wouldn't he say anything? Why wouldn't he go back and tell his friends? Josh's family suggested that the confusion in his statements might have been due to translation issues. In media interviews, his parents described him as a good kid who wouldn't hurt a fly. But law enforcement analysts pushed back. They said a language barrier doesn't explain how a story shifts from "I passed out on the beach" to "we were kissing in the ocean." That's not miscommunication. That's a completely different version of events. As people tried to make sense of what kind of person would leave a woman behind like that, another detail came out. Josh had a girlfriend back home. That was confirmed by his uncle, Richard Reeby. It didn't prove anything, but it changed how people saw that night and the choices Josh made. 2 days later, on March 15th, he returned to the beach for a reenactment. Investigators asked him to retrace his steps, to walk through the events in real time. It was an attempt to clarify what happened and whether the conditions supported his version of events. Josh repeated his story. They reached shallower water and he never saw her again. But for many, the reenactment raised just as many questions as it answered. There was speculation that Josh might be asked to take a polygraph, although there's no evidence he was ever formally offered one. And even if he had been, those tests aren't considered reliable and rarely hold up in court. On top of that, it seemed unlikely Josh would have agreed to it, so it wasn't something anyone was seriously counting on. As the contradictions piled up, public comparisons to a past case increased. Many pointed to the disappearance of Natalie Holloway, another young American woman who vanished under suspicious circumstances while on a beach vacation in a foreign country. In both cases, officials were quick to suggest drowning, and in both, doubts quickly emerged about the last person seen with them. The lack of charges, the jurisdictional limits, and the slow pace of international cooperation all drew eerie parallels. For those following the case, it felt like history was repeating itself, except this time. The reaction was amplified by social media, with thousands of people dissecting every detail as it unfolded online. Investigators reviewed Sudiksha's digital footprint from the day before she vanished. On March 5th, she sent 2 Venmo payments, one at 2:54 p.m. to a user with a sailboat emoji, possibly for a boat excursion, and another at 3:38 p.m., referencing Coco Bongo, a popular local nightclub. People viewed these transactions as proof that she was very active in her trip, possibly paying for a sailboat excursion and not planning to leave. Then investigators turned their attention to Josh's phone. He had been seen holding it while walking to the beach, possibly recording. Agents believed it might contain location data, messages, or video, but accessing it wasn't simple. The phone was American, and Josh refused to turn it over. Legal cooperation between 2 countries was required, and even in the U.S., Apple has refused to unlock iPhones in past cases. Even with all the speculation and public scrutiny, Josh still hadn't been arrested. He hadn't been charged. Dominican officials made that clear. The term person of interest was something the media used, not law enforcement. FBI sources later said that if the case ever moved forward in the U.S., they'd need to confirm that any statements Josh made were obtained legally with proper rights advisement. Some former federal agents argued he should have been read his rights from the start, but cross-border legal hurdles slowed everything down. Sudiksha's family never stepped back. They stayed in the Dominican Republic, worked closely with their attorney, remained in contact with investigators, and pushed for every possibility to be fully explored. With no new surveillance, no forensic breakthroughs, and no cooperation from Josh, it became harder to tell what, if anything, was still actively being pursued. Publicly, they chose their words carefully, but they made it clear Sudiksha wouldn't have just disappeared, not willingly. The search continued by land, air, and sea. Dogs combed the shoreline, helicopters circled overhead, boats swept the coastline and deeper waters. But some criticized the effort, questioning whether the search area was truly wide enough. Given the size of the resort and the surrounding terrain, the response didn't seem to match the seriousness of her disappearance. As time passed with no confirmed sightings, public speculation only intensified. Podcasts, news outlets, and online forums picked apart every angle of the case. They pointed to the unexplained timeline gaps and total lack of physical evidence, and urged investigators to do more to find Sudiksha. As experts examined the possibility that Sudiksha had drowned, opinions began to split. Some said that if she had gone under near the shore, her body would likely have surfaced. Others, especially those with diving or military backgrounds, warned that strong currents, rocky seabeds, and shifting tides could delay or prevent recovery entirely. They pointed to similar cases where victims washed ashore weeks later or were never found at all. One former agent described the sea as the Big Hungry, a force capable of keeping someone hidden without leaving a single trace behind. Without progress in the case, people were left to form their own opinions. Theories began to spread, and soon wild speculation took over online forums. Some floated the idea that Sudiksha had staged her own disappearance. There was no evidence to support it, and nothing in her behavior made it remotely believable. Others suggested human trafficking or the possibility of a targeted kidnapping. A few pointed to cases where tourists had been robbed or attacked near resorts, hinting that something similar might have happened here. Some even proposed analyzing local cell tower data to see if any unfamiliar phones had pinged near the beach during those early morning hours. If unexpected devices showed up in that window, it could point to people outside the group, people who weren't supposed to be there. But even as speculation grew, law enforcement reminded the public that the investigation was still active. FBI sources and legal analysts emphasized that international cases take time. Every step, whether it's accessing a phone, issuing warrants, or coordinating with foreign agencies, has to move through layers of legal review. And until something breaks, every theory remains just that, a theory. On March 17th, Josh's legal team filed a writ of habeas corpus arguing that his continued detainment at the hotel was unlawful. He wasn't allowed to move around the city freely, and the uncertainty about how long he'd remain confined weighed on him. 11 days after Sudiksha was last seen, her parents submitted a formal written request asking Dominican authorities to declare their daughter legally deceased. The letter confirmed the family's belief that Sudiksha had drowned and asked officials to issue a legal declaration of death. The decision was devastating, but the family said it was necessary. In a televised statement from their home in Virginia, her father's voice was shaky as he said, "We are coming to terms with the fact that our daughter has drowned. This is incredibly difficult for us to process." Her mother stood silently beside him and then visibly broke down. They asked for privacy and reminded the public they were still trying to care for their 2 younger children while navigating the unimaginable. In a written statement, they added, "While no declaration can truly ease our grief, we trust that this step will bring some closure and enable us to honor her memory." They even reportedly asked media outlets to stop airing surveillance footage of Sudiksha, choosing dignity over spectacle even when the world was watching. The moment marked a major turning point, not just for the family, but for the entire case. It was the first time they publicly acknowledged that Sudiksha might not be coming back. But more than that, it signaled something deeper. By formally accepting that she had drowned, they were also, intentionally or not, removing any suggestion of wrongdoing. And in doing so, they were effectively absolving Josh of responsibility, at least in the public eye. The reaction online was immediate and conflicted. Some admired the family's grace, their strength, and the decision to prioritize healing over blame. Others couldn't understand it. Why move toward closure when the investigation wasn't even finished? Why let go of the only person who'd been with her that night without demanding more answers? It was widely speculated that the family may have been facing immense judgment, not just over the disappearance itself, but over the circumstances surrounding it. Sudiksha had been out late, visibly intoxicated, and reportedly kissing a boy she had just met. For some, especially within more traditional circles, that alone carried deep cultural weight. It was reported that the Indian community is small but tightly connected, and some believed the intense scrutiny and cultural expectations may have influenced the family's decision to begin the grieving process rather than continue a public fight. Others suggested the decision may have been tied to religious customs, possibly to allow for burial services or spiritual closure in accordance with family beliefs. Regardless of the reason, to most following the case, it felt way too early to be giving up. On the very same day Sudiksha's parents stood before the world and declared her legally dead, Josh appeared in court, in what's been described as a chaotic and tense hearing, with both attorneys reportedly yelling in the courtroom. The courtroom atmosphere was so heated the judge reportedly had to call a recess before they proceeded. He stood before a Dominican judge and asked for permission to return home. According to multiple reports, he told the court that Sudiksha's mother had once thanked him for saving her daughter, framing himself as someone who had already been cleared by the victim's parents. But his request wasn't fully granted. The habeas corpus ruling didn't authorize him to leave the country. It only allowed Josh to move freely within the Dominican Republic. His ability to fly home was a separate issue tied to a missing passport. Josh's legal team claimed Dominican authorities had confiscated it. Prosecutors denied the claim, insisting Josh had simply lost it. Some suspected this confusion may have been deliberate, possibly to delay his exit or keep him under quiet supervision without formal charges. The next day, on March 19th, the U.S. consulate in Bavaro issued him a provisional emergency passport. And on March 20th, Josh left the Dominican Republic with his father. Their first stop wasn't the mainland, it was San Juan, Puerto Rico. Photographers spotted them at the airport, both wearing hats and face masks, apparently trying to avoid recognition. But even that didn't go smoothly. Footage from that day shows Josh being held up by authorities in San Juan due to a passport issue. It hadn't been properly stamped. While officers worked to sort it out, his father Albert waited nearby, visibly irritated. Reporters surrounded him with questions, and he clearly wasn't in the mood to talk.
Please, just no comment. No comment is what I said multiple times, and I'm pretty sure that means no comment. I'm just a regular human. I don't know how to do this stuff. I'm just a dad who had his son taken away, and I don't understand. We just spent 2 weeks trying to stay together, and now I don't understand.
By then, news of Josh's departure had already begun to spread, and the backlash was immediate. People were stunned. A man who had been the last person seen with a missing woman, who told conflicting stories, refused to hand over his phone, and was recently under hotel supervision, had just walked out of the country. But Josh's departure marked a turning point. He wasn't just gone physically, he was out of reach legally. With him went his phone, possibly the only piece of evidence that could answer what really happened that night. On March 31st, a Dominican judge formally dismissed the case against Josh, citing a lack of evidence to pursue criminal charges. But this ruling did not close the larger investigation. Authorities stated that the missing person case remained open, though to many watching it felt like something was quietly being closed. In the weeks that followed, the search lost momentum. No new leads, no new announcements. Her family, who had been pushing so hard in those early days, stepped back from the spotlight. And with that, the pressure faded. There was no one left demanding answers. No one searching for Sudiksha. For people who'd followed the case from day one, it felt like things were ending way too soon. The heartbreak was real, and for many, it turned into frustration. The search had barely started before it stopped. Some believed Dominican authorities were more interested in protecting tourism than pursuing justice. A petition began circulating, urging officials to keep looking for Sudiksha. Some started to look at resort employees, wondering if anyone there had seen more than they were saying. Police claimed they'd interviewed the staff, and if you're wondering about the hotel in all of this, the Rio Republica Resort did issue public statements after Sudiksha's disappearance. In one, they expressed sympathy and said, "The safety and well-being of our guests is our highest priority," adding that they were cooperating fully with local authorities. They also addressed reports about the power outage, clarifying that it had been resolved by 2:13 a.m. on March 6th and that security cameras were operational and recorded high-quality footage. The hotel emphasized that the outage was unrelated to her disappearance and noted that red flags had been posted on the beach to warn of strong currents and very high waves. Still, some people who were at the resort during that time said the ocean didn't seem especially rough. So was the surf truly dangerous? Or were those warnings being used to support the drowning narrative? That's still unclear. With so many questions and no one accepting responsibility, not even the hotel, it started to seem like no one would be held accountable. Critics even pointed to private investigators like T.J. Ward, who had worked on the Natalie Holloway case. He publicly offered to help her parents multiple times, but no one took him up on it. And for many watching from the outside in, it started to look like maybe they really didn't want to get to the bottom of this. What happened to Sudiksha became a painful example of how quickly someone can vanish and how easily an investigation can stall when there's no evidence to follow. A young woman disappeared, and somehow the world just kept going. That's a terrifying thought. The case is still open. But with no charges, no updates, and no forward motion, it's hard not to wonder if it ever will be solved. If you know anything, no matter how small, about what happened to Sudiksha Konanki, please call the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office tip line at 703-777-1021. This is the end of today's episode. Thank you for watching Eyes on Crime.